So today I want to go over some of the most interesting unique gear pieces we have seen for Diablo 4. But before we go over these items, we have to go over how the unique system is going to work. So in Diablo 4, unique items are the highest rarity of gear pieces, and they're going to be incredibly rare. In fact, the developers have said that the majority of players should only expect to get around 2 to 3 unique items per season. Now, seasons are going to be lasting 3 months, so on average, people are only going to be getting like one unique a month when playing in these new seasons, which is completely ridiculous. That means these things are going to be very rare. And uniques are going to work a little bit differently than every other rarity of gear piece because they have static roles. So once you get a unique, that specific unique is going to have its own name, it's going to have its own power that unique always has, and the affix rolls on that unique are always going to be the same. So if something rolls max life and crit damage, it's always going to have those rolls. But those affix rolls still can roll how powerful they are. So if one unique always rolls maximum life, that maximum life could still roll like 750 to 1000 or something like that. And then on top of that, you're only going to be able to start obtaining unique items once you get into World Tier 3, which you have to complete the main campaign to even get into. Then you also have to complete the first capstone dungeon, which is going to be a very difficult level 50 dungeon. So you'll probably also be around level 50 when actually completing that. And that's when you can first start to get some of the unique items. Because also you can't obtain every unique item in World Tier 3 because once you get into World Tier 4, that unlocks the rest of the unique items to be obtained. So uniques are not only going to be very rare and very powerful, but you also need to continue to get into the highest difficulties to even start to obtain some of them. And like mentioned, these uniques are going to be ridiculously strong, and a good chunk of them are actually going to allow certain builds to actually exist. They're kind of built to be that strong or that build defining. And you are also able to wear as many unique items at one time as you want. There's no limit to wearing multiple unique items, except you can't wear the same unique more than once. And that's more specifically for like the ring slot, or say a barbarian that has 4 different weapons. You can't use 2 of the same uniques, but you could still have your full set be uniques if you wanted. But with how their stats are statically rolled, you probably would never want that, because most likely if you did that, you would have all this power from their special effects, but your stats would probably be really bad. And unique items will also be able to roll as either sacred or ancestral once you get into World Tier 3 and 4. If you've never heard of these systems, essentially once you get into World Tier 3, you can get sacred items, and once you get into World Tier 4, you can get ancestral items. These essentially just allow these specific items to roll higher affixes than they would normally be able to roll. So say a sacred could potentially roll 20% higher than base items, and ancestral could potentially roll like 20% higher than sacred items. So they're not always going to be stronger than the tier below them, but they can be. So once you get into these higher world tiers, you're also going to be wanting to try to get sacred or ancestral unique items, which are going to be even much more rare than just getting any unique item in itself. Now there's a handful of different uniques I want to look at, mainly just because they're more interesting than some of the other ones. Now some of these are going to be from the last developer livestream. They just showed a handful of different ancestral unique items during that live stream, but then some of these are also going to be from data mining. Now the ones from data mining are essentially leaks, because these have never been publicly shown by developers, and none of the public betas you've been able to obtain uniques. So these come from an endgame beta test that was probably almost a year ago at this point. So also keep in mind that some of the stats or effects on some of these uniques could change, but most likely the special effects on all these uniques, even the data mine ones, are probably going to be the same. Now the first item I want to go over is a returning item from Diablo 2. Most people know it as the Shaco. It's the Harlequin Crest unique helmet. And this is not class specific. There's going to be class specific and general use uniques. Now the special effects on this unique are both ridiculously strong. Now keep in mind this is an ancestral, so this is basically as good as you can get in the entirety of the game. But the uniques are you gain 10 to 20% damage reduction. That's the roll range that can roll. That's just damage reduction at all time, which is massive. But the biggest part of this helmet is in addition, you gain +4 ranks to all skills. So no matter what class you get this on, you're going to now have +4 ranks into every single skill in your skill tree, which is massive for a handful of reasons. First off, getting any plus skill rank to a skill on a piece of gear means you can use that skill without putting any points into it. And some skills you don't care about scaling, so this would be very good for any builds that are using skills that they don't care about them being stronger and they just want at least 1 point into it. But also, putting more ranks into skills at a baseline scales that skill by around 10%. Now it may go down slightly as you get more and more ranks into that skill, but if you say you have a main skill you're using, you have 5 points into it, then you get another +4 from just this helmet. You're now going to have 9 skill points into your main damaging skills, which is going to make those skills, like I said, around 40% stronger, meaning this helmet is probably going to have one of the strongest effects in the game in terms of just pure power increases. Because also keep in mind, you're getting these massive damage buffs from having all these plus skill ranks, but you're also getting a, say, 20% damage reduction at all time. The amount of power this helm gives is ridiculous. And like mentioned, this was from the last developer livestream, and this was shown as an ancestral version. And if I would have to guess, this is probably one of the uniques that's only obtainable in World Tier 4. So this is probably going to be one of the rarest items in the game, but it's ridiculously strong. And another one that was shown in that last developer livestream is the Word of Hakan. Now this is a rogue specific unique amulet, and its special is your rain of arrows is always imbued with all imbuements at once. Now rain of arrows is one of the rogue's ultimate skills. It's this massive rain of arrows that covers like the entire battlefield. Pretty strong ability, but it's going to be an ultimate, so it's going to have a long cooldown at a baseline. But then you get to imbue it with all imbuements anytime you use it. Now imbuements for the rogue essentially change the next time you use a skill into a different element. So you have shadow, poison, and frost. These add more damage and they add the different effects of those elements. So this rain of arrows can now freeze and poison just in one go and apply the damage from all those different elements as well. It almost turns this ultimate into another level of ultimates. And I also want to go over some of the stats because it seems like some unique items can have more unique stats as well. So the affixes on this gives +2 rank to all imbuement skills. Already massive. That's going to increase the power of all of them. Now you don't have to put points into them if you didn't have them before. It increased critical strike damage with imbued skills. So now this is just massive damage increase specifically to those imbues. It increases your ultimate skill damage and then your non-physical damage. So the stats on this item are just ridiculous for increasing the power of your rain of arrows that's not always going to be imbued. And I think this necklace is probably going to be used in quite a lot of builds, especially if you can get a lot more cooldown reduction for your rain of arrows, because this is just going to absolutely decimate anything you use this on. Now, to not leave out unique weapons, we have Overkill, which was also shown in that last developer livestream, and this is a barbarian unique, and the special is Death Blow creates a shockwave dealing up to 30% of its base damage to enemies. Enemies who die to this effect also reset Death Blow's cooldown. Now this one is pretty cool because it changes up how this skill works pretty heavily. So Death Blow is normally a single target ability that does really high single target damage and is basically used as an execute, because if you kill the thing you hit with it, it resets the cooldown of Death Blow. So in the beta, when I got some gear in my barbarian, on smaller enemies, I could just spam Death Blow every single one, and I was doing enough to one-shot all these small enemies, so I could just keep spamming Death Blow. Now what this does is when you use Death Blow, it also creates an AoE shockwave that does up to 30% of the damage it was dealing to all enemies in an area. Now since this is a very high damaging single target ability, doing like 30% of that could actually be a really strong AoE, but if that AoE proc from this special effect kills something, it also resets Death Blow. And this may seem like just adding some additional AoE damage, but this could potentially allow a build to actually exist, because normally if you were using Death Blow, you would need something to AoE with. A game like this is primarily built around killing large groups of enemies basically all the time, so you would need Death Blow and some AoE, but with this, you could remove that AoE AoE from your build, only use Death Blow, scale everything in the Death Blow, and this would essentially allow you to add another skill and potentially a lot of skill points and stat allocation into focusing around Death Blow or some other utility skill instead of also needing that AoE skill. And next we have some of the data mined unique items, and all three of these are going to be for the Druid just because I find these pretty interesting. So the first one is Mad Wolf's Glee, which is a Druid specific chest armor. The special is Werewolf form is now your true form, and you gain +2 ranks to all werewolf skills. Now with true form, it means that at a baseline, you're going to be in werewolf form, which I think is just thematically really cool. And a lot of people were definitely wanting stuff like this to always change back into their human form after using their skills. This means you always change back into werewolf form when you're done casting abilities. Say if you have like a humanoid cast or you cast a spell or something that would turn you into humanoid, now that will turn you into humanoid, but it'll change you back into werewolf after that. And then the power increase +2 rank to all werewolf skills is pretty strong, and this could potentially also help with just making your build a bit more smooth, always being in werewolf. Most likely you would have almost all of your skills being werewolf specific skills with this. And then in a very similar vein, we have Insatiable Fury, which is a unique chest piece for the Druid. Werebear is now your true form, and you gain +2 ranks to all of your Werebear skills. So again, just like the werewolf, this changes your true form into Werebear, and again, it's a very cool thematic unique item, and it's probably going to be very strong. This is definitely going to be something where if you're a Druid trying to be a transformation build, a build focused on a werewolf or a Werebear, and then you get one of these, this is just going to be such a cool moment. Getting this thing, now you're always a Werebear, and you've always been a Werebear build, but after you use your skills, it transforms you back into your human form. Now you're just always a Werebear, and all your Werebear skills are going to be much stronger. And the power of these actually seems to be a bit weaker than some of the other uniques we went over, but just the theming around these items is just so cool for anybody that wants to play a Druid. And then something that's kind of similar, but in a little different vein, we have the Tempest Roar, which is a unique Druid helmet, and its first special is a lucky at chance. Storm skills have a chance to grant 10 spirit, which is just a Druid's main resource. But the really interesting part about this is your base storm skills are now also werewolf skills. So now your casts of storm skills, which were before humanoid casts, are now also considered werewolf skills. And this is a helm, so you could mix this in with Mad Wolf's Glee, where you're always in werewolf form now. You have +2 ranks to all werewolf skills. Now all your storm skills are also werewolf skills. So now you could have some hybrid with these two unique of a werewolf build where your true form is werewolf. Now storm skills are also werewolf, so you could have this mix of more melee werewolf skills with your storm skills also keeping you in that werewolf form. You could even potentially, if you got both these uniques, have a werewolf build where you're in werewolf form at all times, but you have majority of your skills being storm skills. So there is some pretty big possibilities with mixtures like this of unique items. Now, as we've gone over in this video, this is going to be very rare to get these two unique items. You would have to be so incredibly rare for on a seasonal server to get both of these on a Druid, but on the Eternal Realm, I definitely could see some people going for these, getting them, and just making some very unique builds based around like a storm werewolf, which would be really cool. But I don't want to spoil all the unique items in the game, so that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.